I'm going to capture some usernames. Okay, let's get started. I wanted to introduce, or maybe just get to know who's on the phone. My name is Sai Trong. I've been working with Carrie for a while in setting up a new server, but it might be good just to say your name and what it is that you do for InClaim, and that way we can also test out your microphone or phone in case you have a question. So I'll start at the very first person I see is Watson. Can you just say hello and what you do for InClaim?
Hello, I'm Ann Watson, and I work in the data management department, and I'm a coordinator.
Great. Welcome, Ann. The next person I see is Audrey Hart, I think. You can just say hello and see if your phone is working and mention what you do.
Hi, this is Audrey Hart. I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my voice, but I also work in data management. I'm a clinical data manager.
Great. Welcome, Audrey. Next person is Barry. I'm just going down the list, and what I see is who's joined. Barry Sussman, if you can see your microphone.
Hi, Sai. I'm here. I've known Sai for a while. We worked together in a few places. And Scott.
Hey, Barry. Can you remind me what department is it considered biometrics? I'm not familiar with the structure.
Yeah,
everybody's biometrics.
Yeah, I'm in biometrics.
Data management, stats, and programming is biometrics.
I see. So in terms of your function, Barry, is it a SAS programmer?
Right.
Contractor. And you can put that Sai after that in parentheses.
Okay. Okay,
great. Thank you.
Okay, so the next person I see is Nicole. Hey, Nicole, can you just introduce yourself and what you do for the department?
Hi, head of biometrics.
Great, nice to meet you over the phone. We've been emailing a little bit, so nice. And the next person is Gary Moore. If you can see if your phone is working, Gary.
I'm a statistical programmer. I'm also a contractor.
Okay. I'll just cut in case Barry is similar. Okay, so the next person is Lynn, let's see if I can spell, or Lima rather, Perez. Can you say hello, Lima, to see if your mic is working?
I work. Hi.
Hi, Lima.
Hello.
Hi, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, hi. I work as a statistical programmer 1 at Intel.
Great, welcome. Next person is Michelle. We're just changing a little bit. As people log in, you know, the web thing shifts things around. Michelle Moore. Michelle, can you say a few words? Mm-hmm.
Sure. I'm also a contractor programmer.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. And we also have Robert Jiang. Hey, Robert, can you see if your microphone's working?
Hi, Sai. This is Robert. Yeah. I'm also a contractor programmer.
Great. Thanks, Robert. And we also have Sonia. Welcome, Robert. And Sonia Minasian?
Yes, Sonia Minasian, yes. I'm a contract statistician.
Great. Welcome, Sonia. We also have Vivian Lowe.
Hi, I'm Vivian Lowe. I'm a statistical programmer 1.
Thanks. Thanks, Vivian. We also have Wendy Huang.
Yes, hi, I'm Wendy. I'm a statistical programmer 2.
Okay. My typing is a little slow. I apologize. I injured my finger recently, so I'm only typing with my fingers. Okay, so we also have Yan Zhang.
Good morning. This is Yan. I'm the statistician.
Great. Welcome, Yan. Great. I think we have everybody here. No, other team members may join depending if they're calling in a little bit late. But as you know, we are in the process of migrating our server from the old SAS server, SAS 2, over to a new SAS server. And I hope for us to have an interactive session today where if you have questions, feel free to ask and I can answer them. We plan to have another session, next week where I'll come into INCLIN, but at least this will kind of get us started. Among some of the things that we'll talk about, I'll just have a couple of slides briefly as to who I am, so there's some context. I've been working with MedXceed, co-founded this company back in '97, a few years ago, and I work with setting up SAS systems and also CDIS data standards and analysis programming, located in Fremont, California, not too far from where you guys are. Actually, some of you are calling from the East Coast, I believe, and in that case it's a little bit far. But I also have team members in Vietnam. I authored a couple of books to give you an idea of my experience. First book I wrote was on analyzing clinical data, which talks about SAS programming primarily within the clinical area. The second book is on CDIS implementation, which is SDTM, ADAM, and ODM. Those are the data models that I talk about in that book. Okay, so in terms of the training today, what I hope for us to do is just to walk through logging onto the system and using the system. And when I say using, I mean like running SAS programs, generating analysis data sets, viewing data, that type of thing. And then we also have some new, it could be old, but I think new to the server utilities, everything from, OpenCDIS to text editors that you would use for programming. So we'll run through those. Now, in terms of accessing the server, it may be slightly different from SAS 2, your old server. So we will look into how you would access. And there's some security considerations around that as well. A couple of these are IT related, or what SAM does. And we have, as users, you also participate in backing up your own data, and I'll walk through that. And we have some, so was there a question? I heard a quick question. Feel free to speak up anytime. I hope for it to be interactive. First of all, I hope you're all seeing the screen okay. Does everyone see the screen that I sometimes use this tool. Let me see if it works. This is a free utility I use where it's a pointing device where, I can draw on the screen like that. And I'm currently talking about this last step. Does everyone see the screen okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Perfect.
Right.
I'm also going to talk about a process that we have where we would develop SAS programs in the development area or folder. And then once it's validated and verified, we would promote it to a production area. The short name I call it is dev to prod, development to production. And the production has some more constraints in terms of once it's finished, it's read-only, and it's a protected area, and that's what we use maybe to submit to clients. But some of these processes we can talk more about next week when I'm on site as well. But I hope if for those things that we don't get through today, we can also, elaborate on next week. So do you have any general questions
Hi, this is Nicole. Real quick.
Yeah.
Sam's in the office now, and we're going over the transfer for this weekend. Is there a work instruction for a template of SAS production folders?
Not specifically to the folder structure.
Okay. All right. That's all I need to know. I'm going to get that done with the programmers today.
Okay. We do have some instructions on how to run programs and edit, but in terms of specific directory structures, we still need to probably come up with that.
Yeah, no, well, I'll have that done by tomorrow. Lima and Bob are working on that, and then is Erica on the phone? Erica is not, which is a problem. Bob and Lindsay are going to be, or Bob and Lima are going to be working with Erica after this call, so that'll be transferred over. And then, Sai, just real quick, have you sent me all of the work instructions already?
I did, yeah, I sent it.
Okay, all right, so I have all of them then.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, yeah, that's a good starting point. In fact, I'll reference them during our discussion today. So as a reference point, too, I also wanted to share with you where these work instructions are. So let me open a browser real quick. And I have them in the web portal that we've been using for our installation and validation. So this web portal here that you can see essentially is just Inclin with MetaX.com, which is my company. And it lists some related documents, but the specific one that Nicole was referring to are these down here. In fact, their titles closely, mirrors what we're going to talk about today. The using the system, accessing, security, and so forth. So these work instructions, I'll reference them, and in fact, I'll copy it onto the server as we talk so that you can continue to use them next week when we log on. In fact, that's the first thing I wanted to show you is where those documents are. Of course, you can download them from the website. But what you see here is the server itself. I'm logging on. I'm using Remote Desktop, and I'll describe more what Remote Desktop is in a minute. But the first thing I wanted to show you is that, well, a couple little things that is different in that one thing I should explain is that if I iconize this is my desktop, this is my local computer. And, this is a Windows 7, so the start button looks like a Windows 7 machine. The first thing that you'll notice is that the new server is a Windows 2012, they call it, which is like Windows 8. And its start button looks a little bit different. So we'll get used to that in a minute. So one of the things that you want to do is, I suggest, creating what they call pin to taskbar. These icons down here are things that I commonly use. I pin them. For example, if I were to unpin this, meaning I remove it, the File Manager or Windows Explorer is a common tool. One way to get back to it is you can right mouse click and say search. And so I can search for file, there it is. It's funny, in Windows 2012, they changed the name to File Explorer. It used to be Windows Explorer. But anyways, I can always right mouse click and pin to taskbar. Notice that it popped an icon here. So that's a common, whenever you use a common tool like SAS or Windows Explorer, I suggest just pinning it to your taskbar. That way you can open it up and it's very fast. So the new server has the two main drives that you'll be using are F and E. And in fact, the directory structure that Nicole was referencing, we will begin to build In fact, we're planning to migrate the files over, so when you start working on it, you'll see the whole data directory folder here, but it hasn't been
So,
fully
Sai, let me give you an
put on
update
yet.
on that. Is that Monday
Sure.
when you come in, everything in development from the folders will be migrated over. Nothing will change. The one thing is that people are saving things, various things outside of those folders. Lima and Bob are going to clean that up to date. When you go into the new SAS server, nobody's going to have write privileges to store those files outside of a folder starting on the new server. So just to kind of give you an update on that, but you will see everything migrated over, and then also a production side with the folders as well.
Great. Yeah, I think right now the F drive is pretty empty, as you can see. We just have this folder for validation-related documents. But as Nicole mentioned, on Monday, you'll see a lot more folders and files appear after the migration is complete. So let me show you one feature, and this will be a good example. So let's say I create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it training. And let's say I want to copy files to the server. So notice that locally, this taskbar down here is my local machine, and this taskbar up here is the server. So one thing you can do is you can open up Windows Explorer on your local machine and navigate to a folder. So let's say I go to, let's see, I have some documents here. So let's say I have a work instruction here as a Word document. I can right mouse click on here and say copy. And normally, you can copy among folders in your machine fine. But notice I'm jumping up to the server now, and I right mouse click and I hit paste. So what I'm actually doing is, you can think of it like FTP, File Transfer Protocol. And it simplifies in that it goes through Windows Explorer. So what I've just done, I copied a Word document from my local machine. It could be your laptop or desktop. And if you have the right permission, you can copy it directly onto the folder by drag and dropping or cutting and pasting. So that's one example within Windows and using remote desktop that some people are very familiar with, but others may not know. I thought I mentioned that.
Hey, Sai?
Because, yeah.
Are we going to be able to map the drives to our local machines?
That's a good question. We haven't yet done that, and I can work with Sam to try to do that. It's possible, yeah. But currently, what we were planning to do is have everything located on the server, and when you run your SAS, the SAS itself is on the server, and everything will be referencing, directly on the server. But yeah, in terms of accessing it through a map drive, I think it's possible. We haven't set that up, but we can look into that for you.
Okay.
Hopefully you can just work directly on the server. But a map drive is a good idea. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Occasionally I have to move things down to my local machine to, to email or to do various things. Or I have a preferred editor, that I like to use. So I have the SAS2 drives are mapped, so I can access them, pretty readily.
Okay, I'm going to make a note of that real quick here. And we can always look into a brief work instruction for that if it's useful. But the current work instructions are drafts, and they don't include everything. But if map drives is a common task, we can show you how to do that.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm going to jump a little bit in that the PowerPoint says here, the related utilities is number 2. And one of the utilities is, let me jump down to it here. So it's not completely linear, I guess. But the utilities, there's several of them. And one of them is a search utility called Agent Ransack. Since I'm going to use it right now, I thought I'd jump there. So what I'm going to do as an example is, let's say I have all these documents here, and there's SOPs, validation documents, but I'm only interested in the work instructions. So I have it locally here on my Windows 7 machine, but you can also see it here on the server. But let me first find all the documents locally here real quick. So maybe I look for work instruction starts with the W, and in case it's a new Word document X, I'm going to search for it. This search utility is much faster than any other Windows search. So it's a multi-threading search utility. So let me do W here as well. So notice that's very fast. When I click on search, it lists all the work instructions here. And in a similar way, I can copy this, and then I can go onto the server and paste it. So what I'm doing now is copying all the work instructions that Nicole and I were just mentioning earlier about up here, so you can review them on Monday again if you like. So that's a quick Windows 8 or Windows 2012 thing that in conjunction with one of the utilities. Just a brief mention, the utility on here looks the same in that you can go over to the F drive, and let's say you want to search for all Word documents, so anything with doc or docx, and you can search for it. And it's very fast, as you can see. When I click on it, it almost instantly shows up findings of the various files, and you can sort by, date if you want, and find the ones you want. So that's one example of a utility that we have on the server. Convenient and much faster than any. So you want to search for a SAS program that has, a particular proc in it. Let's say proc print or something. I don't know. You can do that. And when I hit start, it finds all my SAS programs very quickly, as you can see. So that's an example of a nice search facility. It's almost like a Unix grep if you're within the Unix world, but you can save this, and you can also find where inside the code that it found these types of findings. So is there any general questions on this, one of the utilities we have on the server for the server that you can search for your programs?
Is it case sensitive?
Can you speak a little louder into the microphone?
Sorry, is this text search case sensitive?
It's not that's a good question. It's not case sensitive by default, but you can. There's an option to make it case sensitive, and let's see, where is it on this? I think it's under the advanced or some other options. You can match case, yeah. So you can go into the options, and you can do case sensitivity. You can do a lot with this, actually, with expressions and many things. But yeah, for case sensitivity, you just go over to the options.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you can have other, search for a particular range of dates, and there are many nice tools. But for SAS programming, and you could search for the output as well, I find this a useful tool. Okay, so since we're here on the server, and I want to mention about using the system, so let me get back to that slide real quick. In terms of using the system, we actually have a work instruction for this. It's this one here. So let me open that up. So on Monday, you can, if you forget what we talked about, open this up. And it talks about everything from, developing a SAS program interactively versus batch. And it has screenshots. And so let me just walk through briefly how you would program in SAS interactively. So notice that the work instruction shows you how to search for SAS itself and pin it to taskbar and run it. So let me show you that. So when you first start, your desktop will be empty. And what I mean is you would not have this on your taskbar, so I'm going to unpin it. In fact, it'll just be almost an empty taskbar. I was working on it, so I've been adding things. So what I recommend is right mouse click on the start, click on search, and then type, a word that has part of the application. So notice that several things come up. The SAS EXE is the one that you want, is the SAS application. You can right mouse click on that and pin to taskbar. Notice that an icon appears here. So you can then click on that and SAS will start. For those of you that have used Display Manager 9.3, note that one of the differences is we're running SAS 9.4. And SAS 9.4, there's a couple of things. There's a whole thick book on what's new, 9.4, but I do want it to, I say the core aspects of 9.4 are the same. I don't think you'll run into many differences. There are some differences that if you use the BI tools, the Business Intelligence Server, but if you're running, this is considered base SAS or foundation SAS, there are not too many differences. So I think you're pretty safe. I'm working on another project where we're doing a migration using Business Intelligence, the metadata server. In that case, there are more differences, and you have to migrate and do a lot of things. But in this case, it looks very similar to 9.3, with the editor and the log. And so I think most of you are very familiar with opening a SAS program, and let me maximize it a little bit. And then, you can run the entire program, or you can select a part of it and running it like that. So does anyone have any questions about how to start SAS and interactively, I should say? I'm going to go through Batch in a little bit, and how to work with Display Manager. I think most of you are aware, is that right? Okay, good. So I think feel free to ask me if you have any specific questions. But this is, I think, will be very similar to what you have on SAS 2, the old system. Okay, so the other way that you would run your SAS program is in batch mode. And batch mode is when you go and open up the Windows Explorer or File Manager, and you navigate to your folder where you have your SAS programs. So let's say you have here under Programming, Production, SAS Code, Listings. So here's a SAS program. So you can right mouse click on it, and in some ways it's similar in that there are actually two options. This is if you're using a Unicode type character, but the most standard one is using this batch submit here. And when you do that, it will run the program in batch as you see, and it creates the log and output. In this case, it's also very standard and similar to your old SAS 9.2 in terms of right mouse clicking and running it. Does anyone have any questions about running SAS on the new server in batch mode? Pretty standard and obvious, isn't it? No?
Right. Yeah. This isn't actually our current working procedure because our logs are all directed to a particular directory and everything. So we actually have a BAT file that we use to run things in batch.
I see. Yeah, if you have an auto-exec, so right now in this directory, this is our validation directory, there's no auto-exec file. So if I were to right mouse click and run a program and there's an auto-exec, it would run that first and then it runs my program. And in that auto-exec, you can add things like you mentioned to redirect your log to a different using prop print2 or whatever option you like. But yeah, you can have full control. What I just showed you is the vanilla basic default where it writes the log in the current directory. Okay, yeah, it's good to know that if you have other options then it should work exactly the same way. In that, if you have that AutoExec here, it would run, in the same way that you had previously. But one thing I wanted to note is, where is SAS located? Now, you as a user would only have read permission to this. This is the actual SAS executable, but I do want to show you so you have an understanding. So if you're curious as to where it's located, you can write a little program here that says, my path equal to the path name of, I think it's called SAS root. I'm doing this from memory real quick. Let me put up the path here. But what I want to show you is the configuration file and where things are set. So let me go there. So notice that the actual SAS executable on the server is located here in the program files folder. So let me grab that, and I'm going to see if I can go there in the SAS folder. Now, this is where the executable resides, the SAS exe that we're running. But notice that there's an accompanied configuration file. Now, you normally won't be editing this, but if you have a particular setting that you think is universal that everyone will use, you can share that with Nicole and Sam and I, and we can update this. In fact, this actually includes another one due to languages. The way SAS does it is the English language version is under a subfolder, so if you run another language, you can just point to that. But let me show you briefly what that looks like. So if I were to open that file, the English configuration, it has all the options, everything from, where the SAS root is located, SAS home, and so forth. The only thing, and let's say if you have system macros, you can add it in the auto path here. Let's say there's a, inclin macro library that everyone always uses. Instead of doing it in AutoExec, you can just add it here, and it will be part of the SAS system, for example. The only thing that we changed that I wanted to mention is the workspace, the SAS work. Whenever you write or read in a data set and process it, it puts it into a temporary folder, like a work area. Now, what we're doing here on the server is a little bit unique in that the work area is this W drive here. And the one thing unique about it is we're using a software. So this W drive, it looks like a normal hard drive, but in reality it's part of RAM. RAM is the random access memory part of the system that runs very fast. So instead of writing to a physical disk with a spindle and magnetic, head, it's actually doing it to RAM. So your SAS processing should be faster than what you saw in SAS 2 because we're running things in memory. So it's like in-memory processing in some ways. It's much faster. Does anyone have any questions about the SAS configuration and how we did the work area temp space and the unique use of RAM? Mm-hmm.
So this configuration file is usually only editable by admins, so we would have to make suggestions and have an admin change things if we needed things added to it, right?
That's correct, yeah. So you would only have access to this file. So you would put in a request to, Nicole, Sam, and I, and we would review and edit it only when it works out for everybody. The reason is, if I were to change a text line here or, location, it affects all SAS sessions. So it's relatively a high risk from a validation standpoint. But, yeah, you're right. We would need to review and then edit it. But the nice thing is that it's across the board, and we don't have to, figure for everyone separately. So this is a nice way of centralizing all the configuration.
How large is the RAM drive?
That's a good question. Normally SAS points this to a hard drive, and that could be like 100 gigabytes or even a terabyte. But memory, as you know, RAM is very expensive, so we run out of space. We can run out of space if you are processing a large data set. But let me show you how big it is real quick here. What I just did was I right mouse click and look at the task manager. This is part of Windows. And if you go over here to performance, it shows you a little bit of detail, but let's see. Sorry. I guess this is it. So right now, the memory we have, what we have left is available. Let's see, there's a total committed page. No, I guess it's only altogether. This is 2012. It's slightly different than the Windows 7, but I believe from recollection we have 128 gigabytes total, and we allocated. One quick way to look at it is we can do this real quick. We allocated half of that. So we allocated about 64 gigabytes to this RAM disk. We basically took the RAM on the computer and split it in half. So the whole system has I'm trying to do this from memory, I think it's 128 gigabytes. And we split it in half. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah? So essentially, the RAM disk takes about roughly 60. I think we try to allocate 64, but it shows up here as 62 available because we're using them already. So if you're processing, a process that uses some regression analysis that crunches and that uses all the workspace beyond 64 gigabytes, for example, then potentially you can run out of space. We're working on a process that would clean this up every night, and it identifies things that are older than 1 day, for example, and it can clean up old, defunct SAS jobs. For those that are familiar with SAS, each user that runs creates a subfolder for your work area. And if your programs crash ungracefully, it leaves the SAS folder in the workspace hanging or taking up space out there and doesn't clean up very well. What happens is over time, you get a lot of these files that are just taking up space, and you run out of your work area. And we're going to have a process that will clean it up periodically so that we will always have enough. But yeah, to answer your question, it's roughly 60-something gigabytes that you can work with, which hopefully that's enough. Does anyone have any other questions relating to the work area and how we are uniquely using memory as a way of storing for boosting performance? Thanks for those questions. Those are good questions. It's good for you to have a general understanding because let's say you're running a SAS program and it says you're running out of disk space or work area, then you can yourself go into the W drive and look at your old work folders, and then you can delete your own. In fact, if you go here if you're unsure if this is yours, you can right mouse click and then go to there's many areas that shows you the ownership, but the security shows you the most detail. If you go to the security tab and under the advanced, it shows you in detail the permissions to this folder. And one of which is, so it shows you who all owns it. And in this case, I believe that the main owner is, here it is on top. It says the owner is, we have the SAS administrator account that Carrie and I and Sam use to set up the server. So that's the account that is currently owning this work area. But if you were to run it, this will have your name up here as the owner of that temp file. And I should say temp folder. Under the folder, there's lots of catalogs and things that takes up your work area. Could be data sets as well. But if this is an old one, you can just right mouse click and delete it, and it would clean things up. In fact, these two are way back in February 6th. I'm guessing it's old. I can just delete it and clean it up that way. So that's a good way of maintaining your own work area yourself. But ideally, we would have a scheduled task that cleans it up by itself. So you yourself will not have to monitor it. It'll automatically manage it itself. Great. So any other questions relating to the configuration of SAS and running in batch mode and interactive? Okay. Let me review that work instruction just in case we missed anything. So what we did was we pinned to taskbar the SAS executable, and then we traditionally, you can open the SAS program and you can click on the running man icon to run it. That's very obvious. It's like SAS 101. And to batch submit, you would use the file manager, and I showed you how to pin that to your taskbar. And then, one other thing I should mention about the file manager that may be different than the one that you have on Windows 7. Let's go back to it here. Is there's these options here at the taskbar, and if you look on View, it'll show it. So let me go back. So by default, it may not show the file extension. This particular file, for example, has the extension of SAS7. It's an item store, kind of like a catalog. But by default, if you click on View, it is hidden, the extension. So by default, this is what you'll see when you open on Monday. But what I recommend as programmers and statisticians and data managers is to click on the View and check this. So let me try that again real quick. It happens so fast. Check this file name extension. You can also check on these hidden files. What happens is sometimes there's a system file that is informative and it's not visible, but if you check on that, it appears. Sometimes it's grayed out, but at least you can see it. That way, you have more of a complete picture of the file system. But the extension I find very useful because SAS program is SAS, log and so forth. By looking at the extension, it's very clear as to what type of file it is. Okay, so that's a brief description of the tools in 2012 server, and then you can start editing your programs. One of the users mentioned about using their own editors. So since we're here, I wanted to highlight two different editors that we have, one of which is the Notepad. So let me go back to my SAS program folder. So I go back to my F drive, and I look at a sample folder. So how about under my PQ testing programming, I have some programs here under SAS code listings. So when you right mouse click on this, a couple of editors come up, as you can see. One of them is called Notepad++, and the other one is called TextPad. Now, these two are pretty popular editors on the Windows environment. Now, you may have your own, but at least we try to capture the most common ones. So if you were to click on Notepad++, for example, it will show up, and there is an extension. We haven't done it yet, but maybe I should. I do this for other teams where there is a tool that you can plug into Notepad++ that says color coding for SAS specific code. Notice the comment is all the same color, and the word macro is, not color, we can add it so that it colors specifically for SAS. But it has nice things like tabs and search and macros and things that you would normally see in a nice editor. So that's one way to edit your files. And you can also right mouse click and use TextPad. And depending on your experience, some people use this editor. They have some similarities. Let's see if I can open them side by side. So, they have multi-tabs. You can open multiple programs, and you can switch between them. And you can do most of the search and editing. And they have some macros that you can record a sequence and run it. So those are the two common editors that you can use directly on the server.
TextPad also has syntax highlighting too.
Yeah, TextPad also has it. We can put it in there. I think by default when we installed it last week, we haven't got a chance to put all the configuration options yet. But yeah, we can plan to do the color coding here too. One thing I should note is that if you use it a lot, and one way is to right mouse click on the file and then selecting the utility. Another way is to open it as an application. So similar to what I did with SAS and the file manager is you can right mouse click search for the tool. So let's say it's, Notepad. I think I have Notepad already, as you can see here. So let me do the TextPad. I can right mouse click here and pin to taskbar if I use that option. And that way you can always just run it. Some people do it through the Start menu. Let me describe how the Start menu is different. When you click on the Start menu, notice it takes up your whole screen. In the Windows 7, when you click on Start, notice it shows you only partially a little pop-up. I'm running this on my local laptop here. And on the server, notice that it takes over your entire screen. And you can do the search that we were doing a lot here. But there's this down arrow here. Now, this lists all your programs. So if you click on this, it shows you, this is analogous to if you're on Windows 7 or older, it's similar to the All program. You go to All programs, you see many different programs, and you can see, you can always go down to Control Panel and so forth. But in Windows 2012 or Windows 8, it takes over the entire screen, and you can scroll horizontally to find all of your programs. So that's accessed through, let's see if I can get back. I'll show it you once more. So you click on Start, and then you click on this little down arrow here, and that shows you everything. And then you can slide over and find your program. What I tend to do is I use the search more because there's so many programs. It takes a while to find things. So what I do is, what I showed you is I just right mouse click, search, and then type whatever that tool is. See, I'm curious about CDIS related tools. I misspelled. Let me try that again. And so I can see, there's a CDIS Express tool that's on here, for example. So this is a quicker way I find of getting to applications than using the Start menu and down arrow and finding it this way. And I also like to pin things to my taskbar, so that's very fast to get to my common application. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about navigating and finding their program applications in the new Windows environment? Okay. Since we're here, I'll mention a couple of other, I'll make sure I cover everything on the work instruction here. Editing a program. We talked about batch submitting a program. And then, there's another common task that we do, and that is to compare programs. Now, if you don't have any tools, there's a DOS command called file compare, or FC. I don't really recommend using it in that it's not very visually friendly. It works, but it's kind of cumbersome. You basically type FC in a DOS command. This is the old DOS world. And it kind of shows you the two programs and see what the difference is. It works, however, it's not very visual. The tool that I actually recommend that we use is called Compare It. And let me show you how that works real quick. So if you were to search for it, like what we do, and you type compare, it shows up here. It's called Compare It, and you can pin to your taskbar. So what this does is it allows you to compare even Microsoft Word documents, but in our case, it's common that we do programs. So let me go back to this directory. Normally you have two versions, but let me just compare two completely different programs, see what happens. So if I open this and I look for a program, so let's say I compare this AE listing program with how about a demo program? I'm sure they're very different. So notice that it starts out the same in that it shows me the two programs side by side. The white color means everything's the same. Now what happens is the color codes here show me the differences. In fact, this is like a timeline through the entire file. If I were to scroll down, you see how the color bar here indicates the entire file and where the differences occur. So this is a good way if you're comparing two different versions of your program or output. And you can see by the color code, the red means it's like deleted and changed. So anyways, visually, you can quickly see the differences between your programs or output using this Compare It tool, which is much easier and visually better than the old DOS FC command, file compare. Any questions relating to comparing programs and output files?
Yeah, it's Vivian. Because sometimes when we validate programs, we just need to know the results is the same. We don't have necessarily two same program code. Can we use the here?
Yeah, you can. So let's say you have result files. It could be an RTF or some kind of output file. You can do it as the same way. I'm not sure if I have an example, but let me see. Hold on, let me see if I can find something real quick. Let's say I have two Excel files, and I'm going to make a copy of this, and I'm going to pretend that this is the new version. So if I were to compare these two output files, they would actually be the same, because I basically just renamed it. So let me show you that. You can use this tool for that purpose as well, in that you can say, I'm going to go to that directory. I'm going to select the first file, let's say this one, and then I'm going to go back to that same directory, and I'll select the new one. What it does is, if everything's the same, it shows me that files are identical. So that's a good way of validating in case you know that it's going to be, if anything changed, it would show. If everything's the same, you get this confirmation.
So you can compare SAS dataset.
You can. The visuals will not be perfect because it's stored in its binary format. So you can compare it, but then to see the difference, it's all kind of gibberish because SAS stores it in its binary format. So I recommend to see what the differences are, use proc compare. But just to do a brief check to make sure they're the same, you can use Compare It for SAS datasets as well. Yeah.
Okay, so we cannot just use this tool just for this to validate an analysis dataset, for example.
You can only from the standpoint that if you want to make sure that they're identical. But if there's any differences, yeah, this tool will not really show you because they're stored in a binary format. So a text file like a SAS program is a little bit better since it's visual. I noticed that Word, Microsoft Word, Excel, it does a good job at taking the text from the Word file, even though it's in a table or something, and it will show it to you. So it tries to render the text part of the binary file and show it to you. Only the SAS dataset is different in that it's a binary format, so in that case, it doesn't show very well. But some Word, Excel, of course, SAS programs and things, it works very well.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome, Vivian. And any questions, just jump in, and I'll be glad to answer. So yeah, you basically select the two files. There's a way of selecting both of them at the same time, which I didn't show you. But if you hold down the the control key, you can select the first one and select the second one. I was doing it one at a time when we did it, but you can use the control key to select both. And I think it's a nice visual way of looking at programs and output to make sure you see the differences there. Okay, and I talked a little bit about this already, but I'll mention in comparison with searching for a file. Now, Windows itself has this search tool up here, as you can see. In my opinion, it's rather slow in that, so let's say I'm going to be at the F drive. Let's say I want to find this file, the overweighted overall file here. Let's say it has 3.78 in it, right? So if I go to a higher level folder, 3.78, and I type in 3.78 search, it has problems. I mean, it's not very fast. What I recommend is it's to use the agent ransack tool that we were describing. So you can do something like 7.8 and search for that CSV file in the F: validation, and then under the, was it SAS 94 PQ? This one, and type search. Notice it finds it very quickly. Whereas the search tool here, Windows requires you to index your files, and I find it very slow, the Windows search itself. So whenever you're searching for a file with a specific value, or just the type of file, this search tool is much better than the search available through Microsoft Windows File Explorer. As a side note, I am recording our session. I noticed that not everybody, there may be some people that are not able to make it. So I'll publish this in a recording, a video recording, so that we can review it, or other members can review it to learn about the system later. Does anyone have any questions about? We looked at this a few times, but the search and comparing the Windows search versus the agent ransack search. This one's much better, in my opinion. Okay, great. So we're able to search for files. This does work sometimes, but I find it when you're searching for something, a text that appears inside the file, it's not very good. It searches for the file names. In that case, it finds it. So that works okay. But the ransack tool that I described here, you can find it containing inside the document, and it works, in my opinion, a lot faster. Especially, it does multi-threading. If you read the details, it opens a whole bunch of different search at one time, and then it brings the result to you, so it does it very fast. Okay, another common task is when you're programming SAS is to look at the data sets in terms of the values of the SAS data set itself. And there's several ways of doing that. And let me show you. It's similar to what you have on the old server, but there may be some different defaults. Let me go back. So let's say you're in Windows Explorer here, and you go to your directory, which has some data sets. By default, if you double-click on this, you can also see it. It basically runs this open. If you double-click, there's an error. I wonder. Okay, this is actually documented in the SAS Universal Viewer as a known error. In that, in SAS Viewer, there's a setting. Shoot, I'm seeing if I can do this from memory. It has to do with options. Let me see if I can remember. You go to Tools, Options, and then you go to SAS Data Set, Display Missing. No, it's not there. It has to do with formats. Let's see, Display Formats, Apply Format. Now, if you see this in your default setting, I think this is the one. If you deselect it, it gets rid of a lot of the errors of the Universal Viewer. Is anyone familiar with this well-documented Universal Viewer error? I don't know if you guys even use Universal Viewer as a SAS dataset viewer. May I ask what you use on SAS2 as a most common viewer?
Most common is probably SAS Viewer, but they have a SAS Universal Viewer also.
Okay, that's a good comment in that in SAS 9, starting with SAS 9.1, notice that we're in SAS 9.4 now. In SAS 9.1, SAS released a SAS, they call it SAS Viewer. And when we went up to SAS 9.3, the SAS Viewer still works. The SAS Institute themselves no longer supports the SAS Viewer. But the SAS Universal Viewer is supported in 9.4. So that's one caveat or one drawback, if you will, is that in our new server, we cannot run the SAS Viewer. We can only run the SAS Universal Viewer. So that's a good distinction to note in that this looks a little different than the SAS Viewer, the 9.1 version that you're familiar with. Let's see if I can open another data set. So notice there's a tab view and the menus are different. If you're used to the SAS Viewer, I tried to install it, but SAS doesn't support it very well in version 9.4. And when I asked SAS Institute, they said, we no longer support that. So it's slightly unfortunate because the old SAS Viewer has some nice features that the Universal Viewer does not have. But there's some nice newer feature in SAS Viewer that, you'll learn to like if you use it. That's better than SAS Viewer. But hopefully you'll get used to this new SAS Viewer. It does support more file types like XML and things that the old SAS Viewer does not have. So that is now our default viewer. When I say default, I mean when you double-click on a file, it will jump directly into the SAS Universal Viewer. And what I recommend is if you see some formatting errors, make sure you go to Tools and deselect this. A default setting that has this checked, it causes for a SAS data set that has that may be missing some formats, it runs into errors. So I suggest deselecting this by default. Another way to view the SAS data set, of course, is in Display Manager. So if you're in Display Manager and you're debugging your program, so let me go back to there. You just need a live name to point to that location. So let me see that. And once you have that live name defined, you can go here to Libraries and select your live name, and then just open one of those data sets here. So the nice thing about this is, it's next to your program, so you can look at the data set, you can view by variable name, you can even look at, what type of variable is a character variable of length 15, and, write your program accordingly with, start. So this is another common data set viewer right within Display Manager as compared to the SAS Universal Viewer that is an external tool. It's a separate application altogether. It's not integrated into the base Display Manager. One thing to note, though, is that when you double-click on this data set, it does create a lock. So when you're opening it like this, if another user needs to update this data set, it would show an error saying that the data set is locked. So I recommend before you leave your desk to make sure you don't leave this open because you're preventing other users from working on it. You can always close it down. Similar to Display Manager has a similar issue, so you might want to make sure you close things down. Does anyone have any questions relating to viewing a SAS data set when you're either validating or writing a program? I think it's similar to your old server in many ways, except we do not have the old SAS viewer, unfortunately, because that's no longer supported in SAS 9.4. Okay, so that's a good, we went through a few things in terms of how to use the system. Let me cover a couple of other applications in case some of these you're familiar with, maybe others may be new to some. So we already covered the Compare It tool, and we talked about the two editors and the search tool. The other one is called OpenSeeded. Now, this will help you in validating your SDTM and Atom dataset and creating your Define XML. So I created this. Let me get back to the server here. Close down a couple of things. So I created this on what they call the public desktop. Everyone that logs in has their own desktop. And if you create an item on your desktop, so let's say I want to have this compare it. If I can find it real quick, search for compare it real quick. I can also put it onto my desktop. I think I can just drag it. I'm not sure how I guess it works a little differently. But there are ways that you can add this to your desktop if you like. But what I did was I actually put this in the shared desktop, what they call the public desktop. So when you open it, everyone will see this icon. Let me briefly show you in case you're not familiar. If you go to the C drive and you go to the users folder, every user will have like their own folders, although you may not have access as a regular user to edit other people's desktops. You would only have access to yours. So you would go in here and there's a desktop folder. So basically I can copy things to my folder. But there's one for the public or shared that only an administrator has access. So I copied this on there, and so everyone will see this. But for yours, you should go under your own folder, put in icons or files that you like that you commonly use, and they'll display on your desktop. In this case, is the Open CDISC. So let me open that tool. In general, I wanted to ask, has everyone, is this a common tool that you've used many times in the past, or is this something relatively new?
For some, it's going to be new, Sai, for the more junior level programmers, and for, of course, the experienced programmers, they've used it. So I think a nice review would be good right now.
Okay, great. One thing to note is that this is a Java application, so it's not necessarily a SAS. It's not a SAS application at all. It has no SAS built in, but you open it up like a normal Windows application, and a common task is to do the validation. So when you click on Validate, it allows you to select the type of data set that you're validating. So if you have a SAS data set in SDTM format, you can validate that, or Atom, or if you have an XML file in the define. Define is short for like the data definition documentation that CDISC has a standard for. You can validate that. The thing about these data sets, the SDTM and Atom, is that, and the SEND, is that you cannot use the exact SAS7 BDAT. You have to use the transport version. So you may want to use a proc copy to convert your SAS data set to, XPT extension files, SAS transport files. Once you have it in that format, you can drag and drop, or you can click on Browse here and go to your folder. I have an example here. So let's say I want to validate this AE SAS transport file, and I can just then click on Start or Validate, and it would run through. It has a series of checks. Let's say if there's a required variable that you're missing, it'll tell you about it. And it creates the report in an Excel file. So in this case, the first tab, Workbook in Excel, is a summary of all the findings. We found some errors here and some warnings. But if you click on the other tabs, it gives you more detailed as to the specific findings and a link to the more detailed information. This is a useful tool if you have, a customer client that requires a CDISC data set, that you validate it first and fix the errors before you send it to them. That way you're compliant with the guidelines. Notice that there's different versions of the guidelines as well, so depending on which version of the implementation guide that they're using, you can choose the right one. Any questions about CDISC, or in this case, Open CDISC, and how to use that?
Hi, Sai. This is Wendy. So if we need to do validation on multiple data sets, we just drop them all into that source data box, right?
That's right. Make sure that they're of transport file format. It will not work with the direct SAS7 BDAT SAS dataset extension.
Okay, so we basically drop like several XPT files into that box, and only one report will be generated for all the files.
That's right. Let me go back and do this. Mention one thing in that if you were to, you can select multiple. I only did one example, but you can put as many as you want here. Say I have 4 data sets. You can put your entire study of, 20 or 30 data sets. It would take a little bit longer, but you're right in that it creates one Excel file, and it has all the findings. It does show up as different workbooks or tabs in the Excel, but the report that you get in the end is one final Excel file, which is nice. It summarizes all the findings in one report.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Yeah, there's an option if I just like to leave the default Excel. You can give it to somebody as a CSV in case you write a SAS program to read this in. But yeah, Excel will be a common format that you can send to a client. Right, so that tool is a useful tool that everyone can use that we already tested on the server. The last thing that we installed on the server is the entire suite of. Oh, we also have Adobe. I should have mentioned. We also have the Adobe after that. In fact, we have the Pro package, and I'll describe that in a little bit. But first, we installed the whole Office suite. So I forget what the SAS2 server is, but some implementation, if you need to edit Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, you would have to do it on your local machine. But in this case, everything is on the server. So if you go here to the list of applications, you have access to PowerPoint, to Word and Excel. You also have other tools like Publisher and OneNote and utilities. But primarily, I think most users just use Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. But all those are available for you to use. I won't go into them in detail in that I think most people know how to use, the Office suite. I just want to mention that they're available on the server, so you don't have to go down to your local machine to use them. Any questions on Microsoft Office? That's pretty clear, huh?
Yes. In the Office, do we have a Microsoft project? Project is a nice tool to draw Gantt chart or other kind of timeline stuff inside the Office. Any project?
I'm sorry, your connection was not clear. I think the question was it the add-in to Microsoft Office? Was that the question?
Yeah. Another one
Again?
is like Microsoft project.
I think we do. Well, no, we have a package from Microsoft, but it doesn't have everything. I don't think we have project. We only have Publisher, PowerPoint, Word, but project.
Yes,
maybe.
Can you check because we use project in biometrics? Can you see if we can get that added in, please?
Sure. Yeah. Let's look into adding that. Currently, I don't think we do have it, but let me make a note here.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, these we can. It's more of a licensing thing. I don't think it's very expensive, but we'll look into getting that on the server. That's a good suggestion.
Do we have a zip program like ZZip or something like that on there as well?
That's a good question. We can install, but I don't believe we have installed it. But let me go back and verify.
It would be really helpful for sending password-protected files. It would be helpful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think you're right. Let me make a quick exploration. Windows comes with a zip facility, but it's limited. But let me
it's limited, and you can't put passwords. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you cannot do the password protected files. Let me do a quick verification of that. So let's say you go to a folder where you have some, let's say, basically you want to do a whole bunch of data sets or something, and you want to zip it home. And, the Windows zip only compresses it, but I think you're right. It doesn't have options like password protection. So you can zip it, but, yeah,
yes, I will need the one with the program installed on there so that we can zip and password protect in that one file.
Yeah, good idea. In fact, 7-zip is a good open, I think it's called 7, I forget what it's called now, but it's a good open source that has lots of nice features. Okay, we'll get that. Currently, we do not. So for zipping files, I think initially anyways, you're limited to only creating the zip file without any passwords. But yeah, hopefully we'll get that installed soon to have it with password protection. That's a good point. The other part, that application that we decided to install, there's some licensing limitations, and I need to clarify with Sam, and that is the Adobe Acrobat. As you know, Adobe Acrobat has a free utility. In fact, I think that's the default. If I were to double-click, notice it opens it up in the reader. Now, this reader here is a free program that you can download yourself, and there's no cost. And it's a nice ability to view some PDF files. But in order for you to author or create and edit, let's say you want to add a bookmark or you want to have fancier features and to update this PDF, you have to have, let me search for it real quick. It's called Adobe Pro. One second, let me find it. Yeah, so you notice that we have the reader, which is the default reader that when you double-click on a file you can see. But we also have the Pro and Distiller. Now, these allow you to edit and create new PDF files. So I'm going to pin that and I'll show you the difference. There are many more options. You can, let me cancel this. You can combine to create multiple PDFs and put them into one, and you can add bookmarks, and you can do a lot of features that the free version does not have. But it's a very expensive tool, and I'll be glad to share with those that are interested in how to use this to create things like bookmarks and combining multiple files and editing them. But for now, I'll just mention that it is available, and you can use it directly on the server, both the reader by default and also the what they call the Acrobat Pro. I think it's up to version 11. That's why you see this X1. Does anyone have any questions about the Acrobat tools that we have on the server? So we have both the free reader and also the professional full package. This might be useful when you're doing in complementary to your defined XML. If someone requests for a defined PDF, for example, you can author your defined PDF this way or directly within SAS as well. It gives you more options than the generic reader that you can only look at files. Okay, great. So those are nice related utilities. If there are other utilities that you find that were missing or lacking, let me know. What we do is we like to test it first, so we want to make sure it doesn't affect SAS. And once we've tested and confirmed that it works well, we'll release it so that everyone can use it. Great. So I wanted to take a moment to describe how you access this. It may be a little bit different than how you access your SAS2 server, because we're actually on a different network now. And what I recommend is you walk through these steps of getting the VPN software installed. It's actually part of Cisco. And I'm running it right now, in fact. If you click on what's running in your local machine, in my case, it's this icon here. It's called Cisco AnyConnect. So essentially what that does is it creates what they call a tunnel, a communication between your machine and this server in a secured manner. So if a hacker tries to intercept your communication, is encrypted, so they won't be able to see, all the important SAS data sets that you're working on. And once you have that running, you can then remote desktop to the server. Let me briefly walk through that so you have an understanding. Close this down. Okay, so it's another another one of those work instructions. It has a nice screenshot. I'll show you. I'm currently having it under the F-Drive validation training, and is the system access. So the very first thing you should do is, of course, communicate with Sam. Sam is the IT infrastructure for this project, so he would verify your account and create one for you. Let me describe the roles a little bit. I function more as a SAS administrator, so if it's SAS-related questions that you have, even related utilities, I'll be glad to help. But if it's logging onto the system and user accounts and that type of thing, and Sam will be a good person to help you with that. So the very first thing that you'll do is you're going to send an email to Sam, basically saying, this is my user. Actually, I think he may get a lot of your user accounts from the SAS2 server. I'm going to work with him on this so that hopefully by default you'll have certain things set up. But let's say if you're starting new, you would send him an email describing your account information, primarily your username and what study you're working on. And the first thing you need to do is you need to install this AnyConnect that I was describing. So let me show it to you again. This application running here is called AnyConnect. I'll open it looks like this. It's a little application that runs all the time in the background that creates a virtual private network, a VPN, between your machine and the server. And I'm currently logged into it. I logged in about an hour ago. But before you can even run it, of course, you need to download it. So you download it from this website. If you, of course, don't remember this, you can go back to this document later. And once you download it, it runs and installs, and it runs as a background right in your taskbar as almost like a service. It's running in the background all the time. And then one thing I noticed when I installed it is there will be a couple of prompts. I noticed that when I do it on Windows 8 or another machine, the prompts look different. Sorry, let me go back. So if your machine is not Windows 7, messaging will be a little bit different. But basically, it is prompting you to, do you want to store your password so you don't have to click it every time? And it prompts you for the security keys if you don't have it, for you to allow. So if you see a lot of these prompting, most of the time it is a secured setting, so you would allow it. And once it's fully installed, to start it, you would just click on your start button and type in, similar to what we were doing, AnyConnect. Essentially, you run this application here. And I'm running it right now, so if I click on it, it'll just say that I'm currently already running it. And then it establishes a connection between you and the server. And the very first time, I think Sam has resolved this certificate program. When we first started it, registered, so we were getting the certificate error. I think now you will no longer see this. Essentially, it's a security warning that we haven't registered our encryption key, but I think we're in good shape now, so you don't have to worry about that pop-up. And then Sam would provide you with this login information, essentially a username and password. And then once you log in, you'll see it running all the time in the background, like this, with a little key on it, meaning it's completely secured and logged on. Okay. So, any general questions about the VPN and how to log on for connecting to the server?
Can you use the Mac? I'm using a virtual machine right now, but can I use the Mac with the Cisco software?
It is supported. You know, it's a good question. I haven't fully tested it. You know, Cisco does support it. Just to let you know, I am actually running a Mac machine right now, and but I'm running a Windows machine within the Mac.
What I'm doing, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so I do know that within the Windows environment, it works very well because I think that's the main client that Cisco's developed it for. But they do support, you know, the Mac OS as well. So yeah, I suggest you try it. I haven't tested it, but I think it should work. Yeah. So the next thing that you would do is you would remote desktop to the server. And there's a couple of options that those of you that are familiar with remote desktop, it's built into Windows. In fact, it's also built into Mac OS. The Mac operating system has a remote desktop connection application. Notice it's listed here, specifically to log into Windows servers. So that's nice to have. But there are some options I wanted to mention, and that is, before you even start, make sure you click on this options here. And the most common one that I like to change is in the display tab. So you can go here. You can run it as a small little window, but I like sometimes to run it as a full window. Reason being, if I hit Alt-Tab, which is a key combination, it switches between applications on the server. And it fills up the whole screen. So that's a nice way of working instead of, you know, running in a small window. And then you would connect, and you would log in with your account. Let's see if I can remember my user account. I think it's S-Trung. Notice that I'm currently logged in as the administrator, but I also have a regular user account. And you'll run it as a regular user account. In fact, you have to specify the domain. Windows, the way it's organized, is and I think the name of our domain is Inclin. So to make sure you have the right Windows domain, you type in the domain name / and then your username, and then you type in your password, if I can remember. What I'm doing now is I'm connecting to the server. Let's see here. And notice I'm running in full screen. Notice it picks up my entire screen. I recommend when you're working to do it in this way. It's nicer than running it in a little window. Like when it's a small window, it could be confusing. But when you're running it in full screen, it picks up your entire screen, which is nice. So one thing to explain is that right now, this window here is with my Trung account, but I'll put it to the side. This other window that I have here, which is what I'm showing this document with, is with my administrator account. So I actually have two sessions running on the server. So if I look at the task here and I look at the users, it shows me that right now there's a SAS administrator running and there's Trung running. And, you know, when you log in, your account will be shown here. But you as a regular user will have your own desktop. So mainly that's what I wanted to describe is the ability to run it in full Windows. And you can control, you know, to minimize or to make the window smaller using that little taskbar up here. Maybe some of you are expert remote desktop users, and this will probably be a little bit of a review, but make sure you check that option, and that way when you are on the server and you have multiple things running like this, you can use the Alt-Tab, and it switches between applications on the server. If you're running it within a window, it will switch between this application and your local application. It can be a little bit confusing. So running it in full screen is probably the easiest way. Another thing to note is that you can copy and paste. And I did mention about copying files directly onto the server, by copying and pasting directly. But you can also copy and paste text. You can copy this text, and then you can go down to your local machine. Let me make it a little smaller. I can go down to my local machine here, and I can paste it. Notice that I just pasted what was on the server. So you can kind of work at it as if it's another application on your local machine, but in reality, it's running on a server in a different location. I'll check that out. Okay, any questions about remote desktop as a way of creating your own desktop on the server and running everything on the server? I think in that sense, it's similar to your old SAS 2 server, right? The way you connect is a little different, but the methodology is very similar. Okay, great. So I think we're in good shape there with the, let me verify if I'm forgetting anything with the connection. Part of that. One thing to note, since we're here, as an administrator, I can actually send you a message. So if I were to send a message, and I can say things like, log off, there are maintenance or something like that, if I were to click on this, and I can send it to the whole team, if you're a regular user, you would see this message pop up. It kind of interferes with what you do because it grays out your entire screen, and then it shows you this pop-up. And if you see that, it just means that there's something potentially urgent on the server that needs attention, and you can click OK, and then that way it's a communication channel between the administrator to all the users in a very quick way instead of sending email or calling or something like that. If you see one of those pop-ups, that's what's happening, and an administrator is sending you a message. Okay, let me go back to the document we were. So remote desktop is a good, it's the main way that we connect to the server, and I recommend using the full screen, as I mentioned. See what else. There's another option on here too that that some of you may or may not use. Let me see if I can show you. I have this with other clients that commonly use this. Sorry, in the remote. If you go into the options, there's there's a setting, I think maybe it's under advanced. Shoot, I'm forgetting where it is now. But there's a setting that allows you to do multiple desktops. And I'm doing this, winging it from, essentially what it allows you to do is you have two monitors. You can actually have both of those monitors display desktops on the server. And now I'm getting it's one of these options where if you check it, you can actually display on two different monitors at home or in your office. But both of those screens are on the server. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I remember researching that, and that is a capability of remote desktop as well, which is nice. Okay, so that's mainly how you would connect to the server, is the VPN first, and then the remote desktop to get to the server. Okay, so the next part has to do with, what Sam and Nicole is currently doing now is to set up group permission. And let me describe briefly how it works in terms of your permission. So as an administrator, I can set this, or Nicole and Sam can set this as well. But you as a regular user, you belong to groups, but I don't think you have to go to, add yourself to different groups. But let me show you how it's organized. So there's this utility called Edit Groups. Essentially, it's a Windows construct in this case that allows you to belong to certain groups for permission purposes. So, for example, this SAS user group here is a common one that once your account gets created, you'll be added to this. But then there may be additional groups such as a clinical group, one for one of your studies. So let's say in your case, for the ADYX study, there may be a separate group for that possibly. So there would be more groups to be added. And since we're starting fresh, Sam will coordinate with Nicole in creating these groups. But essentially, if you're a member of a group, you have the permissions to access files that has been granted. So, for example, if I go into the properties of this folder, go into the security, right now, notice that it gives a couple of groups, meaning as user is granted to have read-write, and there's another group called users. But you can also set it to individuals. So Sam, for example, can set himself to become, or the SAS administrator, notice has all the access. What we'd like to do, not apply permission to individuals. We're doing this right now temporarily for validation, but in the real implementation, you should not be assigning an individual permission to folders because it would take a lot of work. If you have, 20 users and you want them to grant to a particular study, you don't want them to be adding one person at a time. What you do is you grant it to a group, and then the entire group will then have access to that study.
So just kind of an update here for the team is that I'm going through and doing all of the read-write privileges. If you're on a project team, you'll have those read-write privileges to your folder. If you are not on that team working on the study, you'll only have read privileges. As we go down through, these are all going to Sam today by 7 p.m. You log on Monday. Any issues that you're not being able to read-write the things you need to on Monday morning, just shoot me a quick email and I'll get that rectified for you.
So this is Henry. If we have somebody that's on a different team that we need to pull over, we'll have to have them added to our group.
If you need to pull a file over copy, you can do that. You just can't write to that folder. So let's say you want to take a program from a different folder. You can copy and put it into your folder that you have write access on for your study, and then make all of the modifications there. You just wouldn't be able to modify and change anything in the original folder where you grabbed it from.
Yeah, I'm talking about getting another person from another team to come over and assist you on your project. We'll have to.
Yeah, they'll be assigned to the right privileges then.
So we'd have to just add them to our group.
Yeah, but we'll be starting out with all of that pretty much, intact. We're not going to be doing all the shoveling and shuffling around groups anymore.
Okay.
And I'd like to see just the first two, the team programmer, lead programmer, and the second programmer, have the right access. So hopefully we don't have like 6 programmers working on, one study at a time.
Okay. So if somebody calls me and asks me for help on a macro that they're having some issues with, I'll have to drag all that stuff over into an area that I have access to be able to try to debug what it is that they're having an issue with.
Sai, is there a work instruction that you and Carrie developed for in development where there would be kind of like a shared folder for those type of things?
Yeah, there are 2. One deals with what we're discussing now in terms of setting the read-write permissions and how it's inherited with subfolders. And there's another one that we'll get into, maybe we don't have time today, but starting next week, is the development to production. The F drive here is all for the development work that we'll be doing. And once it's validated, we're going to promote it or copy it over to the E drive, which is the production area. And there's a process on how to do that with the right permissions, along with the rerunning it if needed to have it with the right dates. But yeah, I call that the dev to prod. But yeah, there's one. Yeah, we do have 2 work instructions for that. Mm-hmm.
So basically, back to the question, Gary, is that there's going to be super users, what I'm going to call, like you and Erica will be super users, meaning you have read-write access to probably all of the folders, where other people may not, because you guys are the problem-solving, kind of jumping in and taking care of things. So we'll have to see how it goes, but I have both you and Erica sort of like that super user right now.
Okay.
What I recommend is when you first start out, we'll create a new, when we do the migration, we'll have a top-level folder. So at the top level, there would be something like data or, biometrics or something like that. And you would start out setting the permission group at that level. So let's say if this were the one, you would, the so-called super users that Nicole mentioned would go in there and set the group. So what that happens is that it inherits all the way down. So all this folder underneath will inherit that by default. But within the study or project folder, you can add an additional group permission that can either open up or restrict more. Most likely, the top will be pretty open to read-only, for example. And then when you go down to the specific study folders, you can then open that up to read-write to specific members. So I just wanted to mention about that inheritance part, in that at the very beginning, or at the top level, I should say here, you would set it to a particular group, and all of its subfolders, the ones underneath it, inherits that by default. And then you can put more granularity of control under those subfolders by granting additional groups for those study folders. So I think this is more of an administrator task, and I can have a separate session with those couple of kind of super users or those administrator type people. But most users, regular users, will not be able to change the permission. Notice that in here, if you look, there are many different types of administration or permission. There's the ability to read, and list means that you can see the files in the list, but you can't do much with it. Read means you can actually open it up and look at the content. And execute means that you can run. So these 3 here allows you to at least go and look to see what it is. But for those that have write, you can actually open the SAS program and make changes to it. And then for those that have full, this means that you can then grant permissions and control it like an administrator. So we'll be granting the right permissions to the right team members. But most regular users, I think, would only have initially list and then maybe read only. And then later on, if it's their project, they would then have more of a write, modify, And if they're an administrator or super user, then they'll get the full permission. The other thing I wanted to mention is, in fact, I start writing the work instruction for a blinded study. And in fact, maybe Nicole, you could clarify for me, do you have a scenario where, so you have a study and you have some folders, and it's going to, so the super user by default has access to it, but let's say you wanted to blind that study because you only want like a statistician and a very few set of people to be able to look at it. So you would actually block it from the administrator, and there's a method of doing that. It's what they call blinding a study. So you're breaking the inheritance basically, and then there's a way of having it unblinded and setting it back. Do you have that scenario, Nicole, that you want to set a permission to only blind it for a specific statistician?
Well, it's going to be, we trade off for randomizations of who's the blinded statistician and unblinded statistician. It depends on how you can do the access, because we would want the unblinded statistician to be the only one that can see the randomization files, whereas both the unblinded and the blinded statistician need to see all of the other files in that project folder. So when you guys were setting this up, what I would want to see is a folder for the randomization files that would be restricted to just the unblinded statistician.
I see. Yeah, I have a work instruction for that, and what it does is, by default, it inherits the permission, including the administrators and the so-called super users. But down to the blinded randomization, it will break that inheritance, and it would only allow the specific blinded statistician to be added. And then it's up to that statistician to then unblind it when they're finished so that the administrators and everyone else can have access again. Yeah, there'll be a separate instruction, but I was thinking of walking that through instead of the entire group because it's kind of detailed to the specific few statisticians later. But we have a separate instruction for that. Yeah.
Right. No, that's fine.
Okay. So yeah, there'll be a separate process for that, but keep in mind that that's different than the entire inheritance from above. Okay, great. I think we ran through these already. I do want to mention about, I think that's in a separate work instruction. Let me get back to the work instructions. In terms of permissions, system access is one area that we talked about in terms of the VPN and logging in. But what we were talking about more, I put it into the security section. And within security, this is where we would establish the groups. So first, of course, you would log in, and then you would edit the groups. Now, what I was showing with this editing of the groups, it's only limited to those super users or administrators. So a regular user will not be able to open this user group up and add members to it. It'll be all grayed out for them. But if you have, as an administrator, you can add additional team members to it. The one thing to note when you do this is you would have to specify the domain. In our case, it's always the same incident domain. And then the name of the user here, the user ID. So basically, when you then belong to this group, the administrators will grant this entire group to the folder and control, what type of permission they have. So that's how the general Windows group permissions work. But there's some, differences when we blind the study. Then we break some of the inheritance. But by default, it inherits all the way down to the folders. So what I wanted to share was that we only allocated 2 hours for today, and it's intended just to give you a preview and some essentials as to how to get onto the server and do your work. there will be more additional details relating to the security that we talked about, and not only group level, but you can control it at the file level for blinding. And so I'll probably cover more of those details this coming next week. And there's the idea of groups, and I also have a specific one for blinded folders, for blinded studies, like the randomization we talked about. I also even have a section on protected data sets, how you can lock your SAS data set so that you need a password to access it. It's analogous to the password-protected zip files. So each time you access it, you have to enter the password before you run it. But because time is limited, we'll probably cover more of these in the next session next week. Since our time is limiting, is there any other specific questions that anyone has before you log in to the new server on, I guess, starting on Monday?
Are we moving to the new server on Monday? Are we no longer using SAS2 starting Monday?
That's a good question. The goal is that around 6 or 7, I believe it's 7.
So starting tonight at 7 p.m., everything goes down. Everything is supposed to be up, SAS2 and SAS3 back up with a migration of folders to SAS3 on Monday morning by 9 a.m. Pacific. So 7 p.m. Pacific, it goes down tonight. Unless I get word from you guys today that you are not going to make a deliverable that we have scheduled for next week unless you have access this weekend. So for anybody on the phone, is that a case for your projects?
No.
Yeah,
okay.
Well, what happens is Sam will see who's on the server like this, on the SAS2 server, or also SAS3, and he'll kick you out. He will send you a message saying, please log off. We're going to migrate. And so what happens is only when he's able to completely kick everyone out, he will then shut down the server, and it will be down for the entire weekend. And he's going to physically move it to where the new server is, and then we're going to migrate and validate all the new files on the new server, and then start it up again. In that, when you log in on the F drive, you will start to see all the same files and folders. It was on the SAS2, but it will appear on. So the plan is that on Monday, you would no longer log into the old, but you go into the new server and you'll see all the files here in the same way, and then you can run SAS and work within the new server. If there's any conflicts, like you needed to do work on Saturday, or please share that with Nicole, because I suspect that things will be down all the way through the weekend.
Are you going to send out a document so we can do all this on Monday?
Yeah, what I recommend is, that's a good question. If you're on the server, you can see these documents here that we're referring to. But even before you get onto the server, you can look at this website that I set up here. It's the beta-x.com inclin. And if you scroll down to number 3, you'll see all those same documents here that you can click on and download. And that will get you started with screenshots of how to, URLs and things that you.
Might be nice if you just email them to everybody.
Sure, I can do that. Why don't I zip it up and email the sets of Word document to the entire team then. That way it's more convenient for you.
You just send us the link if you want to. That's fine.
Hey.
Just make sure that we all have the link.
To the instructions. Okay, I'll send that out before the day's over. That way on Monday you can follow these instructions again.
So in the future, who will be our support for the servers? Like Sam, or So we now, I think it's we send our questions to Jason, like IT support. Like if
Yeah, in the future.
server is very slow, or we can log in stuff like that.
Yeah, I think in the future it will be Sam. But if it's SAS related, of course, always CC to Nicole. But if it's SAS related, I should be able to help too. Sam is more of a systems person, so he knows about Windows and permissions and everything. But he's not a SAS programmer, so he would not understand about the workspace or the servers running slow because of something SAS related. Yeah, so feel free to send me a SAS related question, or of course send it to Nicole, and then she could forward it to me. If something that Nicole can resolve, she'll help you with that. But
so
if not,
can we get the contact email of Sam, like in your email, like in the
Yeah.
So basically, if you can't get onto the server and there's an issue, I want you on Monday to email me. And we need to figure out if it's an IT issue or there's something else. If you have problems logging in and going through, so I can definitely help you with that. But if it's a server issue, technical issue, then let me know so that we can get a hold of Sam. I have Sam's cell phone number, so I can call him directly.
Okay, cool.
Great.
Just
yeah,
go
ahead.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, where's the physical location of the server?
Yeah, it's in Sam's facility. Sam's company is hosting it, and I'm guessing it's in San Mateo. I'm not sure. Do you know his location, Nicole?
No, that's fine. I was just wondering if if it needs to be rebooted, because I know sometimes they would have to drive to the server, to the SAS2 server, to reboot it or to check on the hardware.
It's basically in his office, so he'll be right there to kind of reboot per se if it's needed. So yeah, it's here locally in California.
Yeah, as an administrator, and I think Nicole will have the same access. We can do a software reboot, so we can start and initiate the reboot as an administrator. But you're right, if a physical unplug and plug in again, then Sam can do that from his office.
Si, I got a question. On the Windows Server, you often have the ability to have versions. Is it going to automatically, have versions of files, so you can go back? If you accidentally delete something or whatever.
Yeah, I can get into the more detail next week with the backup and restore features. But in general, Sam will be doing a nightly backup, so you can always get back to last night's version. For more granular, meaning let's say I want something from this morning or an hour ago, then there's a couple of ways. One is a manual. You have to manually copy it back up yourself, and there's some automated approaches as well. But yeah, we can talk more about that starting next week. Okay, thanks, Barry, for that question. Any other question before we wrap up for today? Okay, well, thanks for the joining me in the initial training. We hope that the transition will be smooth. And feel free to email me and Sam and call us if you get stuck. But we'll have another session like this where I'll be in your office. I'll set it up early next week. That way we can go in more detail. I'll also do a web so others on the East Coast can join. That way we can walk through the additional differences between the servers. Great. Well, have a good weekend, and hopefully you're able to completely log off. That way you won't lose any work. If you try to log in Saturday or Sunday, I suspect that it will probably be down.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.